Welcome to our next episode of the Next in Leadership, the interview. We have Brian Conklin on here, and he is a leader throughout the Midwest of FCA, and we're excited to hear his insights. So, Brian, what was your early leadership journey? We'll just jump right into it. What was your early leadership journey that maybe you saw some leadership skills where you felt like you stood above the rest?
Yeah, well, I know Reed's statement of standing above the rest has everything to do with my height because I'm 6'11", and to attach that height to a sport. My first leadership experience was high school basketball, and I look back at that and I laugh, but at the same time, I'm really grateful for the experience to lead as a captain on the basketball team. In those years, you kind of pass a hat around the room and everyone puts a name in the hat of who they think should be the captain, and you're the captain, right? But you're also 16, 17, 18 years old, and you actually have no idea what it means to be a captain. So I can remember kind of being thrown into the fire during those high school years, very ill-equipped, but again, really grateful because it taught me so much. So I look back on those years, and I think there was some things inside my heart that I wanted to come out when it came to leading that team and interacting with the coaching staff. I'm sure I was not a great leader at that time, and very much in process of developing. But yeah, that was my first experience was attempting to lead my buddies on a high school basketball team.
Yeah, and it's amazing because I've had quite a few of these interviews now, and every single person at some point, someone came alongside and said, "Hey, you're a leader." And they didn't necessarily think of them that way, but there were some inherent skills that were there. And there's two things. One, obviously you were performing in basketball. I've seen you play, and you had a great collegiate career and beyond. At the same time as you had the disposition that others look towards you for leadership roles. And then more importantly, someone asked you, whether that's the team, by peers or otherwise. And I think as leaders, we need to recognize that we just need to ask sometimes, hey, take a first step of leadership. And then I'm sure, in that same analogy, your coach came alongside you. He's not, hey, you're going to lead, but not alone. And I think sometimes we say you're the next in leadership, but you got to do this by yourself. But that's not the case, right? I mean, we're here as a platform. We're here as support. And much like this community to really get around other leaders. And so, I assume that's the case, right? The coach said, hey, you're not alone. Maybe you're ill-equipped, but here's some things. Did the coach advise you in that process, in those early leadership journey, to kind of teach you how to be a leader on the team?
Yeah, as I look back at those years, I'm very grateful for my high school basketball coach, and there's actually quite a few lessons that I think I learned from him. You maybe heard that more is caught than is taught, and I feel like he was that kind of leader in my life. It wasn't like we were sitting down in some classroom session and he was going over some curriculum that was teaching me to be a better leader. But he did spend time with me. He invited me into his life, which meant driving around in cars, going to camps, going to getting dropped off at these crazy places where he used to try to push me and put me into some interesting basketball situations. And I think back to those years, and like so much of it was the car ride with him, where he's saying, okay, here's what you're about ready to enter into. I go and have the experience, and I get back in the car and we kind of debrief, what just happened there. So it was a lot of that, just kind of doing life alongside of my coach, where I think, yes, he was very much so raising me up to be a leader, but it definitely, again, wasn't the here's the 5 points to being a great leader type of thing. It was more watching them.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing. I know coaches have huge impact, certainly did in my life as well, positive and negative, of course, but at the same time as that context is there. And, you're the pride of Hubbard, Ohio, right? I mean, you're the Hubbard, Ohio Hall of Fame. And at the same time as he didn't just say, hey, here's my job, and I'm going to do that. I mean, I'm sure that he didn't drive everybody around. I mean, you were a unique talent for that smaller community. And so he's making an investment. And I think that's another principle of a leader is we need to make an investment in someone we see capabilities or talent or unique skills in. And so what are some of the things as we migrate to the next stage where you really learned how to lead self well, right? You were under this coach, you're in this environment, you were chosen as a leader. And then now you had to learn how to lead self well, because we really can't lead others unless we can lead ourselves well. So what are some early examples of you leading yourself well, and some tools you can maybe impart upon our team or the people that are listening as to how they can improve their own self-leadership?
Yeah, it's cool to think about this, but I've been serving on staff with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes for 21 years now, and I would say FCA like was the organization that even got me thinking about for the first time ever, like what does it look like to lead self? I can remember as a college athlete, maybe the most memorable context was just going through at the time FCA was a curriculum. FCA had a curriculum called the 7 daily exercises,
Mm,
and the one that kind of rocked my world at that age was this idea of daily dying to self. You
mm,
know, daily dying to self, which to be honest, now I've been in situations where I've led teams, and I'm you know in a role right now where I'm part of leading an organization, leading others. I would say 100% that the hardest one of all those is leading self, you know, because
mhm,
there is this daily challenge to die to yourself. Like there's something in our hearts that when we wake up every morning, we immediately think of ourselves. We
mhm.
want to do what's comfortable for ourselves. You know, naturally we put our priorities over everyone else's, and it's just a reality. Like if you really want to lead people, you've got to die to that. You know, there's a verse in the Bible that talks about I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. I think that's step number one
Mhm.
when it comes to really understand what it looks like to lead itself. You know, fast forward a few years from there, FCA continued to kind of pour into me in a way where they kept helping me grow and mature in my leadership. And it was interesting. I was a part of this experience that they put together for about 20 leaders within FCA, and the whole curriculum over a 2 year period was lead self, lead
Mm,
others, lead teams, lead organizations, and again, all kinds of lessons learned along the way. But the one, you know, if you fast forward to the end of that 2 year experience, the thing that my brain and heart kept going back to was this idea of, man, you can't lead in any context if you aren't leading yourself. So, you know, they had shared at that time an acronym, the heart of leadership, that I thought maybe there's some helpful tools here. But this idea of the H standing for hungering for wisdom, you know,
mm.
as a leader, if you're going to lead yourself, like you have got to be at that point where you never think you've arrived in your
Right.
leadership. Like what is the latest thing that you're learning? What's the book that you're reading? What is God teaching you from your time spent with Him every single day? Like wisdom has got to be something that you are just almost weirdly hunger for. You
Mhm.
just desire that because you realize if you have that, you're going to have a lot of other things in life. You know, the E when it came to the heart of leadership and this idea of leading yourself was to expect the best. And
Mm.
as you look at leading other leaders, or you just look at how you lead your own self, like there's so much negativity in this world that
Yeah.
can distract you from what your leadership really needs to be. So this idea of waking up every day just expecting the best is going to happen, expecting the best in others, it's really honestly a different way than the world looks at it. The A stood for accept responsibility. You
Mm.
know, leaders have got to be able to look in the mirror every single day and go, "What was my role in whatever just happened out there?" You know, like there's certainly challenges that are going to happen every single day
Yep.
in leadership, and you've got to be able to go, you know, as a leader, take responsibility and go,
Yeah.
what did I do to lead to this outcome? Sometimes that's great outcomes.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's you got to look in the mirror and do the tough thing and go, hey, this didn't go how we thought it was going to go, and you know, what's an area that I can grow. The R stood for respond with courage.
Mm.
So you wake up every day, again, tough things are going to happen. And as a leader, you know, other people are looking at you. They're going to be able to see, is this leader doing the hard thing, or are they cutting corners? And you know, so again, if that's morally in a culture where crazy things are going on, like is that leader going to lead themselves in a way that sets a
Right.
standard for others to follow, or if that's just a situational basis. You wake up and there's, you know, a challenging conversation or a tough decision that needs to be made. You know, how are you going to respond? So the idea of responding with courage. And then the T in that heart of leadership is thinking others first, so
Mhm.
again, take it back to the daily die to self. Jesus Christ himself came to the earth in the form of a baby, even though he was 100% God. And he went to the cross to die for our sins, and he defeated death and rose again and is now seated at the right hand of the throne of God.
Mhm.
And what was driving him is he was thinking others first. First and foremost, he was thinking about what his father wanted
Mhm.
in that situation. So you take all those phrases from that acronym there. You just go, man, that is different than what the world looks like. But it really does get at what does it mean to lead yourself.
Yeah, and I think, one, you were talking about when you were in college and you were, the highest percentage three-point shooter, and you are saying most people would go get NIL money for that, right? Next in leadership NIL. And they'd want to promote self and say, "Hey, I'm the leading scorer. I should go get my next opportunity." Instead, you're saying die to self. It's the exact opposite of what you'd think as an athlete on a team where they're trying to give me the ball, let me win. And I think then you go to the heart, and leadership does start with the heart, right? That's why I love that acronym. And think of others first, right? Is team. If you go look at the teams that win, it's not because they have a great individual that thinks only of themselves. It's actually the exact opposite,
Mhm.
right? It's the team that wins, and you have to think of others first. And again, following that hard, and I think it's a phenomenal acronym that is really things that all the things we can do, right? I think it's not external that hey, if they did this, I'll respond after the fact. It's do these things first, right? I think that's the heart of leading self well. And then ultimately, if you embody those, that leads to the second part of the conversation, which is leading others well. Who doesn't want to work with someone that embodies that acronym heart, right?
Mhm.
Thinking of others first and hungry and encouraging and etc. And so that, now that you have this foundation, and I also think another key takeaway from that is there's organizations that are out there that do develop people, but many of us haven't necessarily had that opportunity. And that's what this platform is for. But if you don't have that opportunity, get in front of other people that will develop you, whether that's a coach or a curriculum that FCA provides or these other organizations. There are tools out there to help you develop if you haven't been in an environment like you were blessed with for a 2-year period of time to get developed. And so obviously you embodied a lot of those techniques and that acronym and continue to work on it, I know. So that led to leading others. So let's talk early about leading others and what did you learn in that environment, and what are some things you can share, with the audience here that is trying to start leading others. They've learned the discipline for themselves. Now they're starting to lead others. What are some points of wisdom you can share?
Yeah. Well, again, so much of leading others has to do with leading yourself.
Hmm.
When I think about just leadership, like what does it look like to lead others? Like so much of it has to do just purely with like this idea of like pouring yourself into their life.
Hmm.
And if the thought of pouring out something, really, assumes the fact that you got something in there to pour out, right?
Right.
So I think there's a lot of leaders that are walking around trying to lead others, but they are really empty, on the inside. They're really dry. If that's
Hmm.
spiritually, if that's professionally, if that's physically, like they just don't have anything to give. So how can they possibly give to others?
Hmm. Hmm.
So like it sounds weird, but like I just think like one of the first steps of leading others well has everything to do with who you follow, and,
Hmm.
and me being a part of FCA and being a Christian, in particular, it has everything to do with my personal relationship with Jesus Christ. If I am spending time with Him, if I am reading His Word, if I am allowing the God of the universe to pour into my heart, now I've got a chance to be able to wake up and pour something in to someone else's heart. Like so if that is an experience, if that is wisdom, hunger for wisdom as you grow in wisdom, if you are then imparting that to other people, it can look a lot of different ways, but you really have got to consider who are you following so that you're filled up to be able to pour out. Another thing that I think about as well is you lead others, like you may be able to have influence on others,
Hmm.
but I think influencing others versus like truly leading others, there's a difference there. Like there's a capacity for all of us
Hmm.
when it comes to what it looks like to leading others. You only got so much time. You
Yeah.
only have got so much of you that you're able to pour in. So I really think that part of that process is also identifying like who are those people. As I personally look at my schedule and I look at my day, and I understand the need to lead well at home as well. Like, who are those people that I'm going to identify that I'm going to spend extra time with, and I'm going to give them everything I got. Uh,
Hmm.
and sometimes that means time. Sometimes that means wisdom. Sometimes that means serving them. Like sometimes leading another person means simply going and meeting a need that
Right.
they have that doesn't feel like anything like leadership in the world's eyes, but it's truly about serving those people. So,
And
um,
I want to build on your analogy because I think that, we're not filling a can that's closed, right? And it's full one time and then it's just sealed and not shared, right? It's really this idea of a pitcher, right? A water pitcher that has an open top that's constantly being poured in and then it's being poured out. And if we follow that analogy and we just put a spout on the end, right? It's not overflowing equally, right? Because we have a spout now, it's going to pour out of the spout. And our job is to turn that spout for the greatest return, right? So once someone cup is full, we just rotate that around to fill all the other cups. And that could be work, family, faith, serving others, right? And that, as opposed to just making someone else overflow, we just continue to rotate that around. And I think that's super powerful. One. And I think, one, yes, we fill our lives with faith. And of course I have a faith and I invest in that, but also we have a vocation, right? And so it's not just studying in one category, it's being well-rounded in that regard. And I read broadly. I read the Bible myself every morning, but I also read business books and leadership books, and I think they're very intertwined. And actually, in reading that, what I've learned is that Jesus was the most dynamic leader. We look at him as a savior first, and I know you do that, but he's also the most dynamic leader and has built an organization, the Christian church, that has been around for millenniums because of the nature of how he invested in others, his disciples in this instance, in a leadership capacity beyond just communicating their initial salvation. And so that taking that to the next level and being able to communicate that and carrying and imparting the wisdom going forward. And then it's a matter of how that's communicated, right? The writing and the sharing and the communicating. And so ultimately, again, following that analogy, Jesus, obviously he was baptized and then died on the cross, but then he was a disciple. He was investing in the others, which are the disciples. But that built an organization, right? And so now as you step forward and you're leading others, and now you're leading an organization, which is it's transferring it away from somebody you can talk to and pour into directly every single day to creating systems and processes that can be carried forward even in our absence, but not losing direction or inertia. So what's an example of your early leader leading others and how that parlayed itself into organizations, and then how that leading organizations has evolved over time, and what are some key things you've learned?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can give credit to something outside of me here, which is always good. But I'd done FCA for probably I don't know, maybe 12 years or so, without any kind of operating system, so to speak. It was just kind of me waking up and trying to do my best. But over time I got introduced to an operating system called EOS, which I know maybe a lot of listeners here experience that. In fact, my son is doing an internship at this little engineering firm here in town, and he just texted me a book that they've been asked to read. What the heck is EOS? Because they're about ready to roll this thing out. But I just think about like the importance as a leader of like having some sort of system, if it's EOS or some kind of operating system that can allow you to align people, that can allow you to speak the same language, that can allow you to have a system of accountability. Again, I'm not trying to make an EOS commercial. Like I do tell people like systems are important. If you don't have a system, I like my system better. So
Yeah,
like
sure.
so like this concept of having something that allows you to regularly invest in people, certainly, but align people. It's hard, in a growing organization. And I know this. You've got multiple sites within your organizations that you own, and you've got lots and lots of people. yet you are headquartered out of a certain place, and you're trying to get the message across so that when people are going to work every day, they know, like, hey, here's the mission and vision that we're trying to accomplish it. This is how we do it. Here's the systems and the structures that are in place. Like, I think good leaders are good at systematizing things in a way where people kind of know, like, what's the win, and they know what the way is, of that organization, instead of trying to guess what the leader's thinking all the time. So yeah, EOS has been helpful in the organization that I'm part of leading. But again, just that concept of, if it's not EOS, you better have something in place.
Yeah, and EOS is based on the book Traction by Gino Wickman. And essentially, it's a system that starts with, what are your vision and values? What's the purpose of your organization, right? And if you don't understand that as an individual, it's hard to understand that as an organization. And that's why the self, others, then organization are there. And then ultimately, it helps you align what are the key rocks that you need to commit to in order to accomplish that vision over time. And so it's an organized system. And I think, a good way to kind of tie this together is really like a basketball career, right? I mean, as an individual contributor at the very early stages, and you were tall early, just like your children are. And then you develop skills, but then you go to a system in college, but now there's professional systems that are just more dramatic and developed. And you can see that in the NBA, as they have the teams that are perennial winners, because they have a system they develop that is pervasive, right? I just heard this. I was in Utah on a podcast, actually, and this individual told me that even the chiropractor for John Stockton knew what the goal was, and he was adjusting him to make him play every day. And it was more than the players on the court, right? And so you look at these long-term systems that are established in process, and that's what leads to organizational success over time. And it's hard to get there as a leader, because you have to evolve as a leader, right? It can start with self, and you can die to self. But if you don't have a system, how's that going to scale, right? And so really, as we pull this stuff all together, Brian, how do we tie this together when we say, okay, what is the throughput that you see from self to others to organization that are key stages that have stepped all the way through, that have led to your success as an organizational leader?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I have a great answer, other than like the common thread, again, to take this back to maybe where we started. The common thread of leading self, leading others, leading organizations. Like, if you're a leader, you're involved in all three of them.
Mm-hmm.
And again, takes you back to the most fundamental thing of all three. Then is like how are you as a leader?
Mm-hmm.
What is the thing that you are assuring that you can go back to on a regular basis to make sure you are leading self? Because again, if it's easy in an organization sometimes to go, man, this team or that team within the organization isn't doing well, or that person is not doing well. What's wrong with them? But the question we really need to be going back to is like, okay, what can I do to be a part of helping fix that? So like that common thread of you as a leader, being involved and needing to point the finger back to you. It's like, it really takes some big ownership, that you've got to start with your own heart every day.
Yeah. And I think some of that's even breaking down the individual steps in our schedule and day and time, right? Is saying, hey, have that routine, right? Wake up each and every morning and be poured into, by God and his spirit, and then go pour into others, at which point then build a system for your organization over time. And that's where you're going to see consistent results. It's really done over time. And I think as you hit a ceiling, and a layer, I think it's like, what's going to get me through that? Right. Yeah. So many people like, this is comfortable. This is a status quo. This is where I'm at. And this is sufficient for what I was looking for. And I see a lot of people do that too. They don't elevate their leadership each and every time. And that starts with elevating your personal contribution. I would say organizations will only go as far as that leader's ability to take them.
Yeah.
So if you stagnate in an organization, how do you and where do we need to develop in order to take them further? So as we're bringing this to a close, Brian, where do you see your leadership journey taking you as you've led from self, others, and then to organization? Where do you see it going from here?
Yeah, well, part of it you don't know, and that's the exciting part, right? It's a little bit like leadership's a little bit like a roller coaster. You kind of wake up, in the day, and you try to do your best to predict, and you do your best to think long term. Yet you're going to have challenges that are coming at you. So I think my leadership changes a little bit every day, based upon what the day is. But what I've been thinking about lately is just within the own organization is like, honestly, my brain's been going to structures a little bit. Like, what structure needs to be put in place that allows me to go do the thing that like only I can do.
Mm,
So like FCA really the has been, powered by volunteers for a long time. Those volunteers sometimes look like donors. They sometimes look like board members. We do have staff, that are incredible and a big piece of this. And, I just really, as a leader, need to be able to step back, as I look forward and go, okay, do I have the right structure in place that allows me to identify those crucial constituents within our organization where I just know like those are the ones I got to go spend more time with,
mm,
so for example, my brain is going, I want to spend a lot of time with board members because board members help increase the capacity of our staff, helps
mm,
them do things that they're not necessarily good at. So they're really good multipliers within FCA. I do want to be able to like, I love spending time with our staff. Like it's like one of my favorite things. Yet I need to be pretty good at going, who are a few of those staff that I
mhm.
need to be spending more time with and pouring out into from an organizational standpoint. So I see my leadership going that direction is getting a little more pointed to spend time with a few who make a really big difference. And beyond the organization, I know we talked FCA and organization a lot. Like my family is always a thing that I feel like God has called me to lead, and we're going into a new season where we've got just one at home now. Two of them are out of the house, and I've got my wife, and like it's important to, I think, as a leader, even within the home, to constantly be going, asking the question like, what season does God have us in, and what does my
Mhm.
family need as well? Because if I can't lead them very well, it really doesn't matter. Anything else I do. So it's always kind of a multifaceted thing that you have your eyes
Sure.
on.
And I think, it kind of ties all that together, right? Because I think as you lead self, we're trying to add, value to ourselves by subtracting our self interest.
Yeah.
But then, our time gets divided as we lead others between multiple people, and then ultimately can easily get divided as an organization. But now that you're leading in this organization, you're looking for ways you can multiply. And that's really where we see exponential returns. And that comes down with not just yourself, but who is the other person on the other side of that equation that you have that multiplier in between. And that's our choice as a leader, who we invest in that can multiply our effectiveness.
Yeah.
And sometimes you add a 0 on that side or a 1, it's not going to do much. But if you can add a 2, 3, 4, 5, and many digits beyond, you're going to see a multiplier. So thank you for participating, Brian. Any closing comment or thought or quote that you'd like to share with the listeners as they can leave here to something they could just marinate on before we close?
Yeah. I would close maybe those around you is so important. Like
Mm,
to have an army of people around you. I have what I refer to as a first team within
mm,
our organization. You talked about ceilings. You're going to hit ceilings in your leadership where you just go, how do we break through that? What I have found is if it's me in a closed room by myself, we're not going to break through that ceiling. If you get the right people around you as a team, I think you can take just about any ceiling that God wants you to take and get through it. So I think that would just be my closing encouragement to anyone listening. Like everyone's probably heard this phrase, but life is a team sport. You cannot do this on your own. So get some good people around you to walk alongside you as you lead others. It's critical.
Yeah, and you have a good perspective on ceilings. Being 6'11", you're really close to them, so you know where those are at. So you got to break through some of them and whatnot. So thank you, Brian, for participating in the Next in Leadership. The interview. Hopefully, many of you have taken some information that he shared that he can build those systems. Right, start with dying to self, and then over time help dying to self as you're leading others. Then ultimately, as you build an organization, find the right people around you and multiply your effort through them, and then break through the ceilings in your leadership journey as well. So thank you, Brian, and we appreciate your investment of time.
Thanks for